what I will say is we've learned here in Denver and in San Francisco and in Oregon what the harms of our excessive drug policies are. When we say, like Oregon did, that we're going to let you smoke fentanyl and do drugs outside in public. When we say here in Denver that we're going to let you use marijuana, we're going to let you use psychedelics. When you have San Francisco saying the same thing, we see what happens to our public safety, to our neighborhoods. I think there's a reason why 70% of Colorado has banned marijuana stores. I think it's because people don't want that in their communities. They don't want to see the presence of these substances. So I think we still have a choice to make there. We made our choice with alcohol. In my opinion, in many ways, it's a deal with the devil in terms of the harms that you talked about. But we have a choice to make with the other harms related to these other drugs.
So, is there any smart approach to marijuana? We're going to find out in a moment, but first, like and subscribe to this channel. Click on that little bell icon for notifications and find the audio of this show on your favorite podcast platform. All right, Luke, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Niforatos. Nice long Greek name.
That's good Greek. How often do you get called Nostradamus?
Nostradamus. That is actually a new one. Nosferatu is where I thought you were going with that.
That's what I was going to go.
Gotten that a few times, but not Nostradamus.
All right. You're with Smart Approaches for Marijuana.
SAM for short. Yep.
What does the organization do before we get into the details?
Yeah, so we're basically, the sexy spiel is that we are the nation's leading anti-marijuana organization. We're nonpartisan, nonprofit. We've got a science advisory board of scientists from Harvard, Princeton, Yale, who are marijuana researchers. They lead our work.
I knew a lot of marijuana researchers in college too.
Yeah, not empirical firsthand research.
Okay. I went to Boulder. There was a lot of research being done.
I know there's a lot of, home growing going on over there. So the scientists lead our work. We were co-founded by a former Obama drug policy advisor, Dr. Kevin Sabet, as well as former Congressman Patrick Kennedy. So what we see this as is a public health issue. And so, and now it's becoming a public safety issue. But essentially, we push back against the commercialization of marijuana. We see legalization as commercialization. We don't think people need to be criminalized for having marijuana, possession. We think that we should have a lot more research into the medical potential of the marijuana plant. But this idea that we're going to create what has now become the new big tobacco industry here in America, this new big tobacco-like marijuana industry, we just see a lot of carnage waiting to happen with this. So
I'm assuming you guys were not wild when Colorado became the first state to decriminalize pot.
That's right. Well, not decriminalize, legalize. We support decriminalizing low-level possession, but Colorado was the first state to legalize it, along with Washington State. That's actually where we got our founding. We were founded right around that time after Colorado voted. I think a lot of people were surprised. I was surprised. I was here in Colorado, and I voted against it.
What were you surprised?
I think,
you were surprised that it passed?
Surprised it passed. Because
where were you living?
We had defeated it 2 years prior. And then the industry came back with, I think it was more than $14 million from Soros and a whole bunch of other very nefarious funders. And this time they got it across.
What's the big deal? What I mean by this is the war on drugs have been going on for a century. It was a mistake. I will go to my grave saying the war on drugs was a mistake. And by making it illegal, it got worse. The drugs got more potent. All sorts of perversions happened with trying to enforce it. There are racial issues. There's a criminal element. There's mob. All these things happen. And it's going to take another 100 years to pull us out of that. But out of all the drugs that are out there, marijuana doesn't seem to be the most dangerous. Why focus in on that?
So no doubt about it, the war on drugs has had its excesses. It has harmed vulnerable populations. It has certainly been implemented very poorly in many ways. It needs to be fixed. So I'll just say that full stop.
Fixed or eliminated?
I don't believe that we should throw out, it depends on what that means. I don't think we should throw out the discouragement of drugs and the prohibition of the commercialization of drugs. And I'll get to that in a second. But the war on drugs, many people point to it as failure. It has failed in many respects. Where it has been successful is that the use of our illicit drugs, so the use of drugs that are federally illegal, is a fraction of a percent of the drugs that are legal. So, 30% of Americans now are smoking. You have 60% of Americans who are drinking alcohol. Those are our two legal drugs. You look at marijuana and all the other illicit substances combined, and it's less than 5% of this country that's using them. So it has been effective in reducing prevalence, in stopping the promotion of these drugs, which I think is a good thing. So I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't know if you can empirically prove that, because it's been illegal. And it was easier for kids to get illegal drugs than to have a beer.
Oh, I would disagree with that. Alcohol.
You didn't live in Boulder.
Well, I went to public high school. Alcohol and tobacco flowed like water through my high school. I had a much harder time. You really couldn't find the illegal substances out there. But
you go to any Boulder area high school, and I will tell you, finding a beer is difficult. Finding pot, finding cocaine, finding meth.
I don't know what's going on in Boulder, but we'll have to agree to disagree on that. I think you look at our usage rates. Our National Institutes of Health do survey data on our kids, and we know that our kids are using our legal drugs much more than they're using our illegal drugs, just from a data perspective. So my point with that being, I don't believe that the prohibition of drugs, when we, for example, passed the Controlled Substances Act in 1970 that, set our scheduling system and criminalized drugs formally in our federal code, I don't think that started the problem with drugs. You were talking about, how we have kind of now all these problems as a result of prohibition. You look at tobacco, it's a great example. So I look at the reason why drugs have become more dangerous and harmful in society is not because we prohibited them. It's because of the commercial capitalist model. Now, I know I'm on your podcast. I know, we love libertarians, and I have I sympathize with that point of view.
Some of my best friends
are including you now. But no, capitalism's a good thing, but it has a dark side, and I think we all know that. So let's look at tobacco. Tobacco's been legal. Nobody has died. Very few people have died from cancer over the thousands of years that the tobacco has been smoked. All of a sudden, about 100 years ago,
how can you even say that?
Very few people have, not the magnitude now. So 100 years ago, the tobacco industry really came into full fruition. Global supply chain. They invented the cigarette. They added, additives. They did all kinds of things. Now, tobacco is a global killer of millions of people every single year. 500,000 Americans die every year from legal tobacco, and that's very tightly regulated. So I think
from a choice to smoke.
From a choice to smoke, but it is promoted heavily.
Liquor companies every year come up with a new product,
right,
be it White Claw or some vodka-infused something,
right,
and they are a commercial product.
Right.
Are you working towards bringing back alcohol prohibition as well?
Definitely not. So, here's the difference between alcohol and marijuana and all the other illicit substances that are out there. So alcohol is something that's been central to Western civilization for thousands of years. You've had more than 60% of Americans who've used alcohol for a very long time. It's not reasonable to look at any kind of prohibition on that substance. But you have something like marijuana where less than 10% of Americans use that on a regular basis. Yes, a lot of Americans have tried it. Half of Americans have tried marijuana. Most of them don't go on and keep using it.
So your argument is one of societal. What it is saying minorities, political minorities don't count. So let me flip this. If we had been smoking pot as our usual intoxicant and social lubricant for thousands of years, and someone just found champagne and said, hey, this is good too, and we've got 10% of the population, or only 10% use champagne, would you be outlawing champagne?
So I think it's an interesting point you make. I think to further clarify your point, what I would say is it's based on harm. So alcohol.
No, you didn't say it was harm.
Well,
you said it was societal.
Well, it's the harm to society, right? So marijuana is addictive. Marijuana gives you more mental health concerns.
So does alcohol. So does alcohol.
Right. But alcohol's not legal because it's good for us. Alcohol's legal because it's very prevalent. So what I'm saying is, why would we want to commercialize and normalize a whole new class of substances that cause even more harms in addition to the harms we already have to deal with?
Go backward. So when you say that just because a minority of people choose to intoxicate themselves this way, that's why it's bad.
No. It's not bad because a minority use it. It's bad because the substance is harmful.
That's not what you said.
And we want to encourage people not to use it.
When I asked what was the difference,
right?
You said the difference is for thousands of years we have used.
Yeah, most people use it. So it's just not realistic to discourage it.
So because a minority of people use this, that is what makes it bad?
I think from a societal perspective, do I want to see more pot shops, more drug stores, more advertisements for drugs? No, I don't. So I want to have, I think from a public health perspective, for the health of the general population, for our next generations of kids who could get into these products and become harmed for the rest of their life,
so
I want to see less usage. So I know I'm looking at 60% of Americans. It's not going to be realistic to say, well, we're going to discourage alcohol. But you know what? We can discourage the use of substances that the broader public are not using.
The use of tobacco, which is becoming an extinct thing. I'm very sensitive when a majority of people go, hey, minority, I don't like how you live. I'm going to use the power of law to make sure that I don't want to see what you're doing. I don't want to smell it. I don't want to see the advertisements. So your lifestyle stinks, but I'm still going to watch the Bud Light show at the Super Bowl. There's
Well, what I
something
would
that's
say
not
is,
quite
yeah.
consistent.
So what I would say is I think you're interpreting it wrong, because I don't think it's about the person. It's not about someone who's making a choice. And I think from that policy perspective, what somebody does in their own backyard, for example, that's up to them. And I think we need to have policy that allows people to make those choices. But I think it's a totally different thing when we say we're going to allow commercial industries to advertise, market, and supercharge marijuana, psychedelics, all these other new drugs we have coming down the pike.
But we do that with alcohol.
Well,
we do that with tobacco.
Right. But those industries, once you allow an industry that's for profit to come in to get into play, their job is to normalize the use of that drug across society. And so, alcohol, that kills 100,000 Americans a year. Tobacco kills 500,000 Americans a year. I would hate to see what would happen if we allow a new class of substances beyond marijuana to become legal and commercial and see those harms at scale. If we have 60% of Americans using that,
over time, it might become what it was before alcohol prohibition and then other prohibitions, where people found their drugs at the drugstore.
Right, but in those times 100 years ago, to what you're referring to, most of America was rural. America had hundreds of millions of less people. It did not have the corporatization. It didn't have, it didn't have the Model T, the supply chain process, the multinational corporations
the Model T before Prohibition.
Oh.
There were certainly cities and infrastructure and rail and highways and trucks. If not, where in the world did the moonshiners move all their products during Prohibition? So we had an urban society, particularly in the north.
I don't think anybody thinks we had an urban society. Even just look at Colorado 15, 20 years ago, the majority of the power in the state legislature here in Colorado was controlled by rural seats. Now it's totally flipped, along with most state legislatures across the country.
That's a redistricting question. But in fact, back then, you actually had higher concentrations because people had to live closer to where they worked. I don't want to get into that. I want to get into what seems like a contradiction, that this intoxicant, which is commercialized but accepted, is okay. That intoxicant isn't. I have seen the damage of alcohol. I've had friends and family who struggled with alcohol. I have seen the violence around alcohol and domestic abuse around alcohol. I used to have a real job once. It was quite a thing. But I did stage lighting, and I spent a lot of time in places that served alcohol. I've had to deal with drunks, and I've had to deal with people who are stoned. I would much rather deal with the people who are stoned in those situations than the people who are violent and drunk. So, I'm trying to draw out, this is bad just because fewer people use it?
Well, what I would say is, no, it's not bad because fewer people use it. It's bad because of the idea of taking something that very few people use, something that is innately harmful to their mental health, to their IQ. There's a whole lot of scientific data we have on the harms of marijuana. So it's addictive, et cetera. So taking something that is not harming a lot of people and saying, now we're actually going to let this harm a lot of people. That's what it's about. It's not about the number of people who are using. It's about the potential for it to harm more people, I would say. But to your point, though, your example is kind of a little bit like saying, I just crashed the front end of my car. So now let me get a bat, and to be consistent, I'm going to smash the back end of my car too.
So because on that analogy, does that mean you want prohibition of alcohol as well?
No, the point being, well, I think it'd be better if less people drank, smoked, and did all, these substances that are causing harm that you alluded to with alcohol. Yeah, I would love to see. I don't think there's anybody in this country that says it would be so much better if everyone in America drank more alcohol. I don't think anybody thinks that.
I would look a lot better to most people. That wouldn't be bad.
I don't think anyone thinks that, right? So I don't think it's but I think that's the wrong question.
Would you like to end the commercialization of alcohol?
I would love to see more regulations on alcohol. I would love to see higher taxes. We've had the lowest taxes on alcohol since the Korean War. And so we've seen consumption go way up. The Denver Post recently did a really good series on the harms of alcohol in Colorado. It's one of our top killers in this state. I think we need to have an honest conversation about the harms of these substances. However, that is not a real, the conversation about prohibiting alcohol, that's not even a realistic conversation. But what is a realistic conversation where we do have a choice to make is with the drugs that don't have commercial industries built around them, with the drugs that society has not accepted, that Americans have not said, this is something we want to normalize in our society. I think we have to have a full-fledged debate about what do we want our society to look like. And what I will say, let me finish. Right. What I will say is we've learned here in Denver and in San Francisco and in Oregon what the harms of our excessive drug policies are. When we say, like Oregon did, that we're going to let you smoke fentanyl and do drugs outside in public. When we say here in Denver that we're going to let you use marijuana, we're going to let you use psychedelics. When you have San Francisco saying the same thing, we see what happens to our public safety, to our neighborhoods. I think there's a reason why 70% of Colorado has banned marijuana stores. I think it's because people don't want that in their communities. They don't want to see the presence of these substances. So I think we still have a choice to make there. We made our choice with alcohol. In my opinion, in many ways, it's a deal with the devil in terms of the harms that you talked about. But we have a choice to make with the other harms related to these other drugs.
This deal with the devil, we didn't legalize fentanyl. We didn't legalize meth.
Not yet.
Not yet. We have alcohol. Tobacco use, you say it's too big, alcohol's too big. I think that's completely false.
Well, I'm not saying we can't do work on it to try to mitigate the harms.
The amount of smoking that goes on is a fraction in my life from most people smoking to the minority smoking, and now even a super minority. It is changing. It is changing dramatically. So by choice, and I would argue it's not the sin taxes on tobacco. No, that happens because the people who smoke become a political minority. So in other words, people are smoking less, and then this happens. So I just find it odd that there's one intoxicant. These are I've heard, I don't smoke pot, that there are no overdoses with marijuana. People do stupid things and they can die. They can drive. They can walk off of bridges. They can do all this other stuff as they do with alcohol. I'm just trying to figure out, why this one and not that one, and I'm still not getting a satisfactory answer other than this one's too big.
Right. So, well, yeah. So I think, fundamentally, I think we disagree. I don't think someone's choice to use a particular drug defines them as a political minority. I don't look at it that way. I think people are people. That's their identity. And then we have our different choices that we make. And I think people need to be educated about those choices, whether something's legal or not. So I think what this is truly about is the drugs and the impact that they have on people, and ultimately protecting people to the best that we can, whether through information or other policy instruments, from the harms and excesses of industry. Because what we learned with big tobacco is that the industry funded a bunch of bogus research, lied to the public, millions of people died as a result. I don't really want to learn the lesson with the next round of substances that way. So that kind of answers your question.
No.
That's why
smokers are a political minority. Smokers get outvoted and get beat up. They're the ones that get the sin charges for their lifestyle. And yes, you can talk about mean tobacco putting out bogus studies. There was no one who believed cigarettes were healthy for you. They were called coffin nails long before the Surgeon General's report for reason.
Well, we had magazines and newspapers with ads and with articles from doctors who said asthma cigarettes, who said it'll toast your throat, who said it was medical to use cigarettes.
I remember seeing pictures of the 1917 Tour de France, and all of them were smoking a cigarette because the belief at that time was it would open up your airways.
Right.
Now it looks ridiculous.
Right. Now it looks ridiculous, but at what cost? The cost of millions of people's lives. And so from my perspective, I don't want to see us, go to a place where we are going to allow large corporations to build around these substances, tell us whatever they want to tell us about their substances, leaving out the truth.
And I don't want to keep beating on this. Before we get to pot, would you like to, your thing is decommercialize it.
Right.
Does your organization want to decommercialialize tobacco and or liquor?
I think that my generation may be the last generation.
Then ask about your generation. I'm going to try this one more time.
No. Listen to me. I think my generation may be the last generation that has a commercial tobacco industry. I think that it's very possible that the tobacco industry could be completely canned by the public, and possibly the manufacturer could be banned. We're seeing
that is a wonderful answer to a question I didn't ask.
The UK and New Zealand are doing that. So I think that's a positive thing.
So let me try it again. Does your organization want to end the commercialization of alcohol and or tobacco?
I don't think, no. Tobacco I would love to see removed.
Not talking about you. We're talking about
we would love to see tobacco go away. Absolutely. As far as it relates to alcohol.
By government fiat.
I think that if the people support that, then yes. Otherwise, we should do things that can regulate and mitigate the harms of alcohol.
All right.
So I think that's fair.
Let me tell you, the government the government telling me what I can smoke,
know.
what I can't.
It's an anathema to somebody who's a libertarian. I understand that. But I will tell you, being somebody who's an older brother, right? I grew up, I have a younger brother, 4 years younger than I am. I don't know if it's just the way I was raised or what it is, but I think about life from a perspective of responsibility. And so
do I.
Would I love to live in a, Ayn Rand world where I'm not responsible for anyone else's decisions?
Having
of
a
course I would.
Coors Light on a
However,
weekend is not an Ayn Rand world.
Well, what I would say is, we know that when someone uses any drug that's out there, it impacts the society around them. Whether someone gets high and then goes to work and works on the factory floor, whether somebody gets high and gets into drives a school bus, whether someone is a parent like I am and has 2 kids like I do, and they choose to use drugs, and their kids. You talk to kids of parents who have addiction issues. They knew when their parents were inebriated, were high, whatever. And so it doesn't matter what substance it is, if it's legal or not. It has an impact on people. So unfortunately, we don't live in a world where we don't pay for the consequences of people's decisions. We have a safety net that is taxpayer funded, whether we like it or not. We have a healthcare system.
You're being completely consistent from a
so we have to think about these things from a communal perspective.
You're being consistent in that you would like government to outlaw the commercialization of alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana.
I don't want to see the prohibition of alcohol, and I don't want to see the
I didn't say prohibition. I'm using your terms.
Yeah,
commercialization.
Would I like to see less industry control over the airwaves around alcohol and tobacco? Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so you want,
but I don't want to ban the industry. But I just think we need to look at this from the standpoint where people's health and safety outweighs
you made it. I just want to make it clear. That
don't put words in my mouth. I'm not saying we're leading a campaign to make anything illegal. But I think tobacco, nobody would cry.
You are friendly to the idea of government closing down commercialization of intoxicating products.
Certainly, with what we're talking about with marijuana and all these other drugs that are in the debate right now. Well, not things that have already been made. And
that's the
legal
hypocrisy
for hundreds of years.
that I see. All right, now let's get to the danger of pot. All right, I've been around pot my entire life. And as I said, I would much rather deal with a stoned idiot than a drunk idiot. That's what I've seen.
Right.
I also recognize it is a gateway to other harder substances. I've seen people ruin their lives by becoming stoners. The whole Cheech and Chong world is funny because there's a lot of truth to it. So here in Colorado, we've had this experiment. Other states are replicating it. Washington State went way far and said, "No, come on down and smoke your fentanyl, and we'll give you a tablecloth and a soda to help you." What's been the danger here in Colorado with marijuana?
Yeah, so marijuana, I think Cheech and Chong is a great thing to bring up because I think that's what a lot of people thought of when they were voting on marijuana legalization was the Cheech and Chong weed. But joints and all that stuff, the 1970s Woodstock days, long gone. The products now, the industry has invented, it's brand new. Back in the day, the average potency was 2 to 3% potency of THC in your joint. Now it's products up to 99% potency, and people are vaping them, they're dabbing them. And so what
is dabbing? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Oh yeah, dabbing. Yeah. So ask Laura Stack. Actually, she's an old neighbor of mine. She lives in Castle Rock now. Her son Johnny Stack dabbed marijuana. It's basically vaporizing and inhaling immediately a very high potent little bit of THC, usually 99%. Her son, he went psychotic and then jumped off of a parking garage, the Lincoln parking garage. So yeah, very harmful substance now, much more harmful than it's ever been. So 3 big things have changed. 1 is the potency. 2 is the addiction rate because of the potency. So a decade ago, 1 in 10 people who used marijuana in the last year would have an addiction. Now it's 3 in 10. So basically 1 in 3 people who use it may develop an addiction. The other thing that has changed is the mental health harms. So we are seeing more psychosis and schizophrenia related to the use of high potency marijuana, the new marijuana, than we've ever seen before. So we're already in the middle of a mental health crisis. This is making it much worse. There's a new disorder now that we're learning about called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, where basically it's uncontrollable vomiting, and a lot of people are dying in our ERs here in Colorado. You can talk to Dr. Karen Randall from Pueblo's ER. She talks about it. They have people coming in almost every day with cannabis hyperemesis, where people are they're vomiting and screaming at the same time. That's how it's characterized. Scromiting.
Yeah, it's called progressivism.
Yeah, you could
vomiting and screaming at the same time.
So it is a new drug, let me much more harmful now.
Yeah. Well, then why not use the power of government that you like to limit THC? We do that with liquor. We say, hey, this booze is this much. Used to have what I thought was a great thing, which was 3-2 beer, which allowed kids to have training wheels where they could get drunk, but they couldn't kill themselves before they could get hard alcohol. Why not work for a THC limit to say, hey, you cannot have things that are that potent. Here's the limit.
Fantastic point, and I'm glad you asked. So we led the fight in Colorado a few years ago with a lot of other groups here in Colorado to ask for just that, a cap of marijuana's potency, the THC at 30%. We had hundreds of parents, Laura Stack included, many other parents who've been impacted here across Colorado, came out, testified. That bill was shut down by the marijuana industry before it even saw the light of day. And basically what it ended up turning into was, let's research the potency of marijuana and look at the research and come back with regulations that are recommended. And the industry got involved. And so that report was delayed by a year and then was basically gutted. And so we got nothing out of that. So
why not do the same thing that the proponents did and ask the people directly with an initiative on the ballot?
I think that's a great idea. We tried that too. And what did the industry do? They hired every single signature gathering firm in Colorado when they found out that we were trying to do that, and completely shut everyone down from doing it. So we're going to keep trying, not saying that it's not something we're going to keep trying. That is a top priority issue for our organization in every state that's legalized marijuana. Is we need to do something about the potency. We need to cap it. It's something supported by public health. It's common sense. But again, what this gets at is the power of industry, right? And there's many good things about industry. I'm not anti-capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I think the fact that we have innovation in this country is because of capitalism, the fact that we have access to many resources and all these things. But when it comes to drugs, it's a very dangerous and slippery slope. And so you have industries that they're writing their own regulations. I mean, you have lawmakers who they're being asked to basically be the FDA, DOJ, be everything all in one in the state capital.
In your world, if you could wave the magic wand and you keep saying about decommercialization, are you saying that companies shouldn't distribute and sell marijuana, but individuals should be able to grow their own?
I think that would be a much better model.
Is that what SAM
our
promotes?
approach is to decriminalize a low-level possession. That's really where we say. And so if someone, what someone does in their home, if they're going to grow it in their backyard, that's their own business. So yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be criminalized for that. We think it should be discouraged. I think.
What does that mean? I'm always worried about words called discourage, when what you mean is
decriminalization typically means like a fine.
To use law.
Right. Typically, now I don't think police should be going to people's backyards and policing them. I think if they're going to do that in the confines of their own home, they have every right to do that. But I think the broader concern that we have is we don't want to have a commercial industry that is around it, because then you get the invention of vaping, which is an amazing, ingenious. The vaping device was an ingenious invention only possible in a capitalist society. It's genius. But again, it's because what it did was it made nicotine and then now THC much easier to procure, to use, and get addicted to.
And it has also taken millions of people off of tobacco, out of burning cigarettes, actually lighting leaves on fire and smoking carcinogens.
Right. Well, we still have a lot more research to go on that. That may be true, but there's a lot more research we need to do on the harms of vaping versus smoking. But I think you may be right. Obviously, it's better if somebody's smoking a pack a day that they would vape a day. That's our understanding right now. But I think it's better if somebody's not using that, at all, obviously, because it could hurt them.
What I worry about, and because I hear it from progressives all the time, is, we don't want people doing this. Well, yeah, I don't want people smoking pot. I don't want people smoking cigarettes. I don't want, but what they say is, we don't want people to do that. That's a statement, but it's a code for, we're going to use the strong arm of government to enforce our lifestyle values on other people. And that's why I'm happy to stand up for smokers' rights. I'm happy to stand up for drinking rights. I'm happy to stand up for vapors' rights, because even though I'm not into that stuff, I'm into drinking. Take a look at the booze. But I don't want to say my lifestyle trumps yours and the law is going to do it. So when we say we want to discourage, I wish progressives and people who use progressive government tactics, and that's what this is, would be honest. Say, I want to outlaw this, and I want to outlaw it this way. So what is it you would like to outlaw, and how would you do it?
Well, I think the rules you put me in are pigeonholing me quite a bit. But what I will say is,
but you want to outlaw the commercialization.
Yeah, well, we don't want to see marijuana be legal.
I'm not pigeonholing
but
you.
The thing is, what I would say though is I'm less simplistic. So from my perspective, okay, I think the first stop is, I don't want to see a commercial industry around a drug.
And how would you change it?
By having that drug, marijuana, for example, be illegal. However, if voters, like they did in Colorado, vote and say this is going to be legal now, then the next thing to say is, well, let's regulate this appropriately to protect as many people as possible. So from my perspective, depending on what is our reality, we need to be realistic about it and then come up with the best solutions to protect the most number of people. And for me, my rubric is, I think about my family and I think about other families across the state of Colorado and what kind of environment do they want to grow up in. Now, I spent a lot of time in my younger years going through the eastern plains of Colorado, Strasburg, Flagler, tiny little towns. And I know that there are a lot of people that are moving out to those towns that want to raise their families there because they don't want to deal with the drugs, the homelessness, the pot shops, the advertising, all these things. They want their kids to be growing up in a safe and protected environment where they won't be exposed to these drugs and substances. So I think as a society, we have said so far in this country that we don't want to see drugs normalized. And from my perspective, the people pushing to normalize drugs are the commercial industries that have a profit interest in legalizing drugs. So I don't want them to get a foothold in this country. Otherwise, I think families across this country don't get the environment.
If you were going to pass a law, let's keep it in Colorado, and you could pass one law, what would it be?
Just any law randomly?
No, just on this issue.
On this issue? I mean,
if I were to pass one law randomly, it would be the death sentence for people who drive slowly in the passing lane. What would you? But on this issue, what is the one thing?
I think I would cap the potency of marijuana to what it was during the 1970s.
I might very much agree with you.
But the industry, it's a non-starter. They won't do it. And they have millions and millions of more dollars than anybody in my line of work does because we're working on public health. We rely on donors.
But if the people want
they get profits.
The tobacco industry is not nearly as powerful as it once was. The alcohol industry
They're still making billions of dollars every year.
Making billions
nice
of dollars.
dividend that Americans invest in to this day on the stock market.
There is no way that a pack of cigarettes, which was $1, when I was a kid, is now $12. There's no way you can tell me that they
not
have
accounting
the same.
for inflation.
Not accounting for inflation. So the syntax is on that. It shows that people change.
Yes, we can put lipstick on a pig with these policies, absolutely. Potency caps, raising taxes, doing things that libertarians hate, obviously, but doing things to discourage the harms.
I think anybody who likes freedom is concerned whenever we say.
So here's what I'll say about freedom. Okay, I do. So obviously, knowing you're a libertarian, knowing I'm not. What I will say about freedom is, I think there's nothing more. In my opinion, there's nothing worse than the bondage of being addicted to drugs and having companies making profits, addiction for profit. There's nothing worse than that, and that is the antithesis of freedom. It's nothing at all that Stuart Mill wanted, Locke wanted. None of our foundational thinkers and the ideals of liberty. They all came at this from a perspective of the innate value of human life.
You need to outlaw television.
Listen to me. That is God-given, right? And when someone is locked in the chains of addiction, it is something that destroys their soul, that you hear people talk about it in their worst levels of addiction. It destroys their family. It destroys their prospects, everything.
The same arguments.
Now, listen to me. Recovery is possible for everyone.
The same arguments have been used
need to protect people from that.
On tobacco. The same argument is used on alcohol prohibition. Same argument is used on gambling, which was people are addicted to gambling.
Well, sports gambling's been a disaster. I mean, nobody in Colorado thinks that's going well. Billboards everywhere. As a kid, I grew up watching ESPN. Now I've got to see the sports lines on the ESPN channel. I mean, I think it's been. I mean,
why is it bad?
It's bad because what we're seeing is
people choose to gamble with their money. And that's bad because it offends you.
Well, no, it's not bad because it offends me. It's bad because you see a lot of suicides from people who gamble their last dollar. You see families harmed by people who gamble away money that they didn't have to gamble away for their families. So again, people have their individual choices they can make. But when someone is beholden to an industry who has got them addicted to their product and is holding the curtain, behind the curtain, they're making all kinds of new things that we don't know about, and then they're unleashing it on the public, that's not freedom. Someone's not able to make their own informed choice if they're addicted to fentanyl or marijuana or anything else.
Of course they can make their own choice.
No, when you have the disease of addiction, you are not free. You are not able to think unencumbered with an enlightened mind, which the foundational thinkers of libertarianism
is not free. An alcoholic is not free.
I don't believe so.
What I hear is the same argument for all.
What you hear from an alcoholic is denial.
Let me get this one out. What I hear are social conservatives who, in the best of their heart, want the world to be in their image, what they think is safe, what they think is good. Progressives do the same thing and socially engineer education and food and our homes and pack and stack housing, and it's the exact same model, and they don't see how much it is. So we need to outlaw guns over here because people can be hurt with this. We need to outlaw trans fat because it could be bad for you. We need to outlaw sugary drinks because it can be bad for you. It's prohibition, it's prohibition, it's prohibition. So on the other side, we go, no, we need to outlaw tobacco, outlaw booze, outlaw gambling.
Let
me finish.
Outlaw booze. No, I'm not saying that.
Decriminalize gambling, pornography. Before gay marriage was accepted, I'm old enough to remember when people were still in the closet. The same argument was made for same-sex couples, that it would ruin society and it would wreck the fabric of the family. And so what we have are a bunch of people, whether hardcore progressives saying no sugary drinks, or these guys saying no same sex, but they're all coming up with rules. They're not trying to convince us. They're trying to compel us by law, to coerce us by law. I don't disagree with a damn thing you've said. I just disagree with some of the tactics that what we want to use is because we have enough power here to get government to take away other people's choices.
And you certainly have a point in that government is an inefficient tool. I don't think government should be big. I think government is obviously very bureaucratic. It's not the perfect solution. But what I will say is, on one extreme, you have government, big brother, getting involved in everybody's lives, telling them what to do. I also don't think we should go to the other extreme of no government at all, everyone do a free-for-all, because we know that unbridled liberty is not liberty at all. Look at any of the foundational thinkers of freedom for this country, not one of them thought unbridled, complete liberty was a good idea. That leads to tyranny and destruction. Okay, so there have to be
our
rules.
Founders who were
not just our founders,
who were smoking, drinking, and many of them using heroin.
But again, whatever that may be, I mean, we could debate all the history of that. But there were no industries that were inventing the vape pen, for example, and there weren't many other factors involved there. But what I would say is the other extreme of this is people who are addicted, who are being taken advantage of. And then you have to borrow a libertarian term, you have the nanny state involved in covering all of the downstream health effects of these people. And so, your worldview doesn't necessarily exist where, well, these people all, we have a free-for-all of everything is okay, everything is acceptable, and everyone's responsible for their own decisions. That doesn't exist. I'm responsible for the fact that someone chose to get high and drive because I pay as a taxpayer $3 million, according to NHTSA, for every single person who dies on the road for all of their emergency services. Every death on the road, I pay $3 million as a taxpayer. So I know that I'm responsible for that. So I don't live in a world where everyone can make their own decisions. So we do have to think societally from a policy perspective, what are we going to allow to be normalized? And of course, that changes over time. In many ways, it's good, the changes that happen, but we have a choice to make. And I think with marijuana, with psychedelics, with fentanyl, with all these other drugs that are out there that potentially are profit centers for, in my opinion, nefarious profit interests, we have to decide whether or not we want to let them be in our society.
And the more prohibition you have, the smaller and more potent the drug gets, so it's easier to...
I would disagree with that. Before we had legalization, we did not have 99% THC dabs. They didn't even exist. We didn't have these processes, these chemical creations. It's not unusual that
when they were smuggling moonshine, that's a hard thing to smuggle.
Right.
When it's pot, it's
much easier.
When it's cocaine, it's even easier. When it's meth, it's even easier. When it's fentanyl, it's even easier than that.
Right. And again, that gets to the point of using government as a tool is not. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but I think having government protocols discouraging use, discouraging commercialization, even if it's not perfect, even if of course, there's always going to be a black market. Of course, people are always going to break the law. No matter what law is out there, it's going to be broken. That doesn't mean we should just throw out all laws. We have to set the laws for the society that we envision, which is what our founding forefathers did.
We should set the laws that I like for my sensitivities. Well, I don't like gambling. I don't like pornography.
What happened at the founding of our republic, which is that our founding forefathers and our Congress has decided this is the society we espouse, and we're going to set these rights and we're going to set these laws, and that's how it works.
I thought that our founders said we have a right to life and liberty and a pursuit of happiness.
Liberty, but not unbridled liberty. And the people that they were reading, all the people that they were reading, John Locke said, and Aristotle, and all of the people who they were reading when they thought the word liberty, none of them think that complete unbridled liberty, nihilism, was a good idea. None of them.
I'm not talking about nihilism. I'm talking.
But you are, because you're saying
not at all.
We can't say what is right and what is wrong, what I want people to do. You're saying just the suggestion that we have laws is that I want people to do what I want them to do. That's not what it is at all.
You don't take
Society is allowed to make these decisions.
How about this? You don't take people's stuff and you don't hurt them. And so
drugs involve hurting people and taking people's stuff. When someone's in addiction that people steal for, if you talk to any police chief, I'm from Lone Tree. Our police chief will tell you, number one reason for their thieving, another one reason for crime in Lone Tree and in many other cities across the state,
because people are addicted to drugs.
Yes. It's because of their addiction.
But what about the millions of people who use recreational pot who are not addicted, who are not stealing cars, who use the same way you use a glass of wine? And let me tell you, I know hundreds, if not thousands of them. And so what you're saying is you can't live the life you like because this small minority is screwing it up for you. How about we focus on the criminal behavior. You steal a car, you're going to go to jail. You commit a crime, you're going to go to jail.
If I don't
kill
treat
somebody,
the root cause,
you kill somebody in a car, you are going to pay the price. That's the responsibility. Liberty and responsibility.
Well, this is
are the
where
same
government goes so
thing.
bad. When governance and policy starts playing whack-a-mole on symptoms and they don't get to the root cause,
That's not
we're
the
just going to
symptom.
continue to pay money and burn money into society, into our government, paying taxpayer dollars just to whack
Your
moles
premise,
instead of getting
I
to the source
disagree
of
with
it.
your premise.
Because
the premise is
if I know addiction is the source,
personal choice.
yes, but
is-
personal choice
is-
at what cost? And society has to decide what that cost is. That's why we have the laws and apparatus that we've had. Now, we could say as a society in 20 years that, you know what, marijuana is going to be the third vice drug, if you will, that will be legal and regulated in this country. Okay,
Which
well,
I
does that
believe
mean that
It's unstoppable. I think you're already there.
Maybe so, but we still have half the states in this country have said no to that. And so I think we still have that debate going on both at the state level and at the federal level. But if we do that, does that mean we have to be consistent now and commercialize psychedelics? Commercialize ibogaine, which gives people heart attacks, and we've just unleashed that here in Colorado. I guess we'll just see what happens. Commercialize fentanyl, meth, cocaine. Cocaine is something that was pushed. People were saying that it helps athletes work out 100 years ago, to your point. And so, well, we have commercial models for that. To be consistent, do we have to do that? Or as a society, do we say, you know what? 2 or maybe 3 of these vice drugs in a commercial system, billion-dollar industries, that's enough for us. The impacts are enough to deal with, and we're going to say no to the rest of these substances.
What I see is that we get to play games on what we find acceptable. I get that. That what goes into my body used to be my choice. Up until the 1920s, what I took was my choice and my responsibility. Because you put it on a higher and higher shelf, it means that instead of the individual being responsible, the government now becomes responsible. You're fighting a supply and demand problem that you will never be able to fix.
Well, what I would say is maybe in a state of nature, what I did was my choice. We're no longer in a state of nature, and we're no longer in a largely rural society that is much more spread out.
We're going circular about the ruralness.
The other thing I would say is,
suburbanization did not happen 100 years ago.
Listen to me. Your choice, though, people still have the right to make that choice. And I think if somebody makes the choice to use drugs, very few people are going to jail these days for using marijuana at home or for using any substance at home, for example. And I would
do you want to legally protect that?
I would say that what somebody does in their own home, I don't think police should be going to their home. Whatever the policy solution looks like,
you should run for office, my friend. You're good at this. Let me try it again. We're going to run out of time.
The reason why is because you're trying to pigeonhole me into one prescription. I don't have one prescription. My mission though is to keep people free from addiction and keep them safe. And if that involves decriminalization, like
saving them from themselves.
But I think there needs to be some.
You want to save them from themselves.
I think that there are some people who are vulnerable who do need to be protected. I think we have to have a safety net.
So back to the question you didn't answer. Do you want to legally protect people's right to do drugs in their home?
I do not want to legally protect that right. What I want to do is I want to protect them from industries that are looking to profit from addiction off of them.
So you would make it illegal for someone to smoke pot?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all.
If there was a law to say we're going to outlaw smoking pot or keeping pot in your own house, would SAM support or deny it?
I mean, that's just a very simplistic question that I don't even, it depends on what that would look like.
Simplistic questions give me good answers.
I think we as a society have a right to say this is what is going to be normal in our society. And you know what? 32,000 homes in Colorado exposed kids under the age of 5 to secondhand marijuana smoke just last year, according to our Department of Public Health and Environment. So we know that what people do in their homes does impact
thousands of households.
So it is something we have to think
hundreds of thousands of households use pot and use liquor responsibly.
Millions of people use, and I know you're going to love this point, millions of people use cigarettes without developing cancer. But what we do know is that it is the top killer. It's the top voluntary killer in our society. And so that doesn't mean
you
that
just said the
anything.
perfect word, voluntary. Voluntary. What I hear what I hear from your people who believe that society needs to be protected from itself and that government has a role to keep order is that individuals cannot make the right decisions for themselves. I hear the exact same bullshit when it comes from progressives who say parents can't make the right choices for their kids' education. They cannot make the right choices for their kids' health care. They shouldn't drink sugary drinks. They shouldn't have trans fat in their diet. So what I'm hearing on both sides are citizens are morons, and we can't trust them to one, make their own decision, and secondly, to hold them responsible for the consequences
Well,
of their
first of all,
decisions.
I don't think that it's even possible for the government to make sure that everyone does all the right things, as you're implying. So I think that's a very extreme example. What I do
But
think,
it's the same
though,
mindset.
what I do think,
Exactly
though,
the
is
same
that there are
mindset.
things we can do to reduce people from becoming hopelessly, scientifically, biologically dependent on an industry selling them products.
I
that
agree.
doesn't exist in
I
all of it.
agree.
And the way that we can
I
do that is
agree.
preventing
I do
these
not want
industries
to
from
use
doing
government to do that.
But if without government, industries are the most powerful. There are companies in this country
We're
who have
victims.
larger budget line, have larger P&L sheets than entire countries in this world.
Right.
So
And it's
if there
interesting that
isn't
both
policy
progressives
to
and
counteract
conservatives, so both progressives and conservatives play the victim card.
I'm not
Let
playing
me
the
finish the
victim
thought.
card.
You
I
just
think
said it.
society.
We are powerless.
Why form
you
a
said.
government then?
You said we
Why
are
form a government
powerless.
if society's not allowed to
You're
say what we want to be
saying-
normal and what we want to not be normal?
And so if we want to bring
it
back
all entails-
slavery, if that's normal, we
well,
can
we
do
had
that
to
too.
pass policy to ban slavery.
Right.
Should everyone make their own decision to become a slave?
Right.
Because some
So
people
what you're saying
could say, I
is-
want to be an indentured servant. That was happening after
But
we
what you
eliminated
did is
slavery.
played the victim card, and both sides
It's not
play
the
it.
victim card.
You said we are
If there's
powerless,
politi-
and
there
that
is-
is crap.
But here's
We're
the thing:
not powerless.
Well, and with all due respect, we don't have a libertarian system of government. We have a republic
We do.
that is a hybrid of democracy. And what
But
the
you-
public has decided.
I'm focusing in. Don't filibuster this. Don't filibuster. I gotta go. You said we're powerless.
I don't
I'm going to
think-
give you a chance.
I did
Are
not
we
say we're powerless.
You did. You said
Well-
we're powerless against these corporations. Do you
In our
really
political
believe?
system, yes.
All right. People want to get more information on what you
Yes.
do and how you do it.
So check out learnaboutsam.org for SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, all of our work on marijuana, and then go to gooddrugpolicy.org for our work on other drug policy like psychedelics, fentanyl, the opioid crisis.
By the way, let me tell you, as fun as this has been, I agree with the end goal. I completely agree with the end goal. I feel that the tactic is a dangerous one when you get to say government will have my lifestyle. You know, a limit for THC, I can really be on board with that. The outcomes of rapidly decriminalizing or commercializing pot, I see it as well. But when you have a top-down approach and say, we're going to change society by limiting choice, is very different than saying, we're going to change society by changing individual hearts and minds. And that's what's killing tobacco. It's not that the government is taxing it. No, they're doing it because people want to live. I have more faith in human beings. And I find the way you go about this to be wrong.
John, thank you. And I know you have an Italian background. I had a chance to go to Rome a few months ago and was thinking about Cicero, who's one of my favorite authors. And I think you could benefit from reading Cicero if you haven't. He's one of your ancestors, I'm sure, because of all the good philosophizing we've done on this show. So thank you for openly hearing me. And I think
No, this has been great.
where we agree. What I would say is I
get it?
too believe in the strength of people. And I believe not only in the strength of people so much that they can overcome addiction themselves, which is one of the greatest victories
But
personally
they can
that I've
deny
seen people,
choice to other people.
but that they can take on industries that have derived profit off of the most vulnerable people in our society.
And I too believe that people are powerful enough to make their own decisions, and of course to pervert.
The people are so powerful, they made a
pervert
decision
government.
as a society that we are not going to allow drugs to be a plague on our society. Everyone individually decided that. And
So we
elected
can.
that.
I believe in
The political process. I do too.
No, I believe that individuals, of course, have the right to force their lifestyles on other people. So should we talk about end-of-life choices now?
I think not.
Luke, thank you. May the force be with you.
Thank you, John. God bless you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.